They called him unsinkable. So what hidden technical detail turned the Titanic into a disaster? On April 14, 1912, it wasn't just the iceberg and it wasn't just the speed. Investigations showed that something buried inside the ship's own structure decided the fate of more than 1,500 people. The rivets, the watertight bulkheads, and the kind of side impact created exactly the scenario this ship had no answer for. Before we break down, step by step, what really happened that night, support this video with a like and subscribe for more real stories explained clearly and straight to the point. Inside Harland and Wolff offices in Belfast, engineers and designers confidently showcased Titanic's plans, pointing to her double bottom and watertight compartments as near-perfect safety guarantees. The White Star Line turned those technical features into marketing gold, reinforcing the idea that no plausible accident could sink her. Officers and investors truly believed that even with several compartments flooded, Titanic would stay steady and seaworthy. Hardly anyone asked what would happen if damage crossed the exact line the math allowed. 4 flooded compartments. That mix of advanced engineering and absolute certainty created a feeling of safety so strong it erased doubt for almost everyone on board. With Titanic finally leaving Southampton, the crossing begins in a rhythm that reinforces total confidence. The first days are calm, the sea stays smooth, and the ship holds a fast pace without any visible strain. Passengers roam hallways, lounges, and decks, finding only comfort and order. The crew follows polished routines, trusting the double bottom and watertight compartments. To many aboard, this modern giant seems to prove the promise that nothing serious could touch her. Behind the luxury the passengers saw, Titanic ran on a massive, precise machine. In the boiler rooms, dozens of men fed coal into 29 boilers, producing the steam that powered the reciprocating engines and the turbine. That system drove 3 enormous propellers, keeping the ship at high speed for days on end. Above it all, watertight compartments and bulkheads were the ship's main defense against hull damage. Everything looked engineered to handle the North Atlantic's routine dangers as long as the limits in the blueprints held. Titanic's safety depended on a tight marriage of steel plates, rivets, and internal bulkheads. She had a double bottom, but her sides were not fully double-skinned, leaving certain areas more vulnerable to concentrated stress. 16 bulkheads split the ship into watertight compartments, designed to survive flooding in up to 4 forward sections. Past that limit, calculations said the waterline would rise too high and spill over the tops of the dividers. The rivets, especially iron ones in the bow and stern, were a weak link. Under extreme strain, they could fail before the plates, opening narrow seams along the hull. On the first nights of the crossing, Titanic deepens that sense of total safety. The sea stays calm, and she surges forward at cruising speed, looking effortless. On deck, passengers watch a star-filled sky and the steady glow of lights along the superstructure. Inside, lounges, corridors, and cabins run like clockwork, as if they were still on land. For anyone strolling the decks or dining under bright chandeliers, this modern giant feels unstoppable. As Titanic pushes deeper into the North Atlantic, her route enters waters known for drifting ice. Other ships begin radioing warnings of iceberg fields ahead of Titanic's planned track. The alerts are logged, but they compete with passenger messages and the non-stop flow of telegraph traffic. The sea remains calm, no visible signs of danger. Smooth water, a dark sky, and faith in the ship's strength drain urgency from the moment, even as ice reports pile up. On the night of April 14th, the ice warning surge. Messages from nearby ships point to iceberg fields directly in Titanic's path. Some reach the bridge, others vanish in the crowd of passenger telegrams. But the speed stays high, close to regular cruising pace with no meaningful slowdown. Confidence in the hull and watertight compartments helps keep those warnings from triggering a drastic change in behavior. On the bridge, everything still feels normal. The night of the impact is almost unnaturally calm. No waves break against the base of hidden ice. There's no moon, and the horizon is pitch black, erasing contrast between ice and water. Lookouts rely on naked eye vision, without binoculars at the crow's nest. Yet Titanic keeps charging ahead at high speed, leaving almost no reaction time. Flat sea, dark sky, and fast navigation create a trap where the real danger stays invisible until it's too late. In the final hour before the collision, Titanic runs on routine. Most passengers have turned in. A few linger in lounges and on deck. On the bridge, officers know ice is in the area, but calm seas and Titanic's spotless safety record soften the sense of immediate threat. The temperature keeps dropping, a quiet sign they're nearing the ice fields. Even so, speed remains high and no sharp course change is made. Operationally, it looks like any other night at sea. When the iceberg finally appears in the lookout's view, it's already far too close for a ship this size. The warning races from the crow's nest to the bridge, and the first officer orders a combined maneuver. Hard turn, engines full reverse. The helm is spun to the limit, the engine telegraph slammed backward, trying to slow and swing the ship at once. But Titanic's inertia is massive, and her response isn't instant. If this kind of technical breakdown helps you understand what truly happened that night, hit like and subscribe for more step-by-step cases like this. When Titanic reaches the iceberg, she's already turning, just not enough. Instead of a head-on crash, the hull slides along the ice. Above water, the berg looks jagged and white. Below, its base is far larger, dense, and rock-hard. The impact hits multiple points along the starboard side, spreading force across different sections. Aboard, it feels like a long scrape, not one heavy blow. That kind of contact opens many narrow failures, not one single gash. As the hull grinds past the iceberg, the real shift happens out of sight. Near the bow, steel plates are pushed sideways and the stress concentrates along rivet lines. In several starboard spots, rivets give way before the plates do, creating a chain of small openings along the hull. Water jets in through multiple forward compartments, not as one giant hole. That spread damage floods several spaces at once, driving the ship fast toward the limit she was never built to cross. As flooding reports arrive from the bow, it's clear the damage isn't in one place. Water pours through several starboard sections, hitting cargo holds, the mailroom, and boiler spaces in sequence. When the engineers add it up, the conclusion lands like a hammer. At least 5 forward compartments are breached. Titanic was designed to float with 4 compartments flooded, not 5. With 5 violated, the bow sinks low enough for water to spill over the bulkhead tops, turning a local wound into an unstoppable chain reaction. On the bridge, Thomas Andrews gives Captain Smith a verdict with no room for hope. Reports from the holds, the mailroom, and the boilers show 5 forward compartments already flooding. He explains the ship can survive 4, not 5.
All hands to the lower passage now.
Move it! Secure the bulkhead!
With that level of damage, the bow sinks until water pours over the bulkheads, spilling into the next compartments. The pumps can't match the inflow. Technically, the ship is doomed. All that's left is to estimate how much time remains to get as many people off as possible.
Under this thing out fastly.
After the technical conclusion that she will sink, the news spreads among officers and crew, but hasn't reached every passenger. On the bridge, orders go out to ready the lifeboats, while many still believe this is a manageable incident. On deck, crew members wake passengers and ask them to put on life jackets, carefully avoiding words like shipwreck or panic. The bow's tilt becomes noticeable to the attentive eye, yet most people still move calmly, unaware of how big the problem truly is. As the tilt grows, the deck's focus snaps to the lifeboats. Titanic carries only 20, enough for about half the people aboard, because rules then were based on a ship's size, not total occupancy. Crew members checked davits, lines, and supports, many doing it in a real emergency for the first time. Some officers order women and children first, while many passengers think this is just a precaution. Most on deck still don't grasp what the shortage of boats will mean. As minutes pass, the water intake overwhelms what the pumps can remove. 5 forward compartments keep filling, and the added weight drags the bow lower and lower. As the bow sinks, water reaches bulkhead tops and spills into compartments that were dry moments before. The list becomes obvious in corridors and on deck, changing how people walk, brace, and hold on. The sinking stops being theory. It becomes something everyone aboard can feel beneath their feet. With water advancing and the bow sinking fast, Titanic's radio becomes the ship's last lifeline to the world. Operators send early distress calls using CQD, then the newer SOS, giving approximate position and reporting collision with ice. Several ships respond, including Carpathia, which changes course and pushes to full speed toward Titanic. But the distance is huge for the time left. Even with help coming, the math says Titanic won't stay afloat long enough for full rescue to arrive. As time slips away, the remaining lifeboats are lowered, many still not filled to capacity. In several cases, haste, uncertainty, and fear of overload send boats down with empty seats. Adult men remain on deck, watching families pull away while the bow continues to sink and the angle grows sharper. Available space on deck shrinks, and movement compresses toward the last boats. Slowly, the area above the boat deck falls quieter, fewer exits, fewer chances. With the bow nearly swallowed, forces on Titanic's hull become deadly in the center. The flooded front pulls downward, while the stern still floats, supported by compartments not yet overtaken. That imbalance creates an intense bending moment through the ship's midsection, especially between the engine rooms and superstructure. The hull was engineered for normal sea stresses, not this extreme combination of weight forward and lift aft. tension climbs steadily in plates, beams, and rivets right where the ship is weakest. Survivor accounts and evidence on the seafloor confirm Titanic did not sink in one piece. Under the weight of the flooded bow and the lift of the still floating stern, the hull bends beyond its structural limit. The lower frame holds for a time, but plates, beams, and reinforcements finally fail near the central holds. The superstructure tears apart, splitting bow and stern into two massive sections. That collapse explains the wreck's layout today and the heavy damage where the bending was most violent. After the break, the stern stays afloat for a short while. Freed from the bow's weight, it stabilizes briefly, but flooding continues through the remaining compartments. Already weakened structures begin to give way, and water now pours in from above through windows, hatches, and torn openings. As compartments fill, the stern pivots again, rising almost vertical before starting its final plunge. The rear section sinks in a more chaotic motion, twisting and fragmenting the hull even further. After the sinking, most victims are in the water, exposed to near freezing temperatures. In conditions like that, body heat collapses fast. Survival time without shelter ranges from minutes to, at most, a little over an hour, depending on clothing and physical condition. Many are still conscious as the ship disappears, but boats are scarce. Several lifeboats pull away, afraid they'll be swamped by people trying to climb in. That's why most survivors are in boats, not the water, when rescue finally arrives. A few hours after the disaster, still in the night and into dawn, the rescue ship that answered Titanic's call reaches the area. Carpathia's radio operators confirm the position and receive fragmented reports that the ship is gone. Lifeboats are found and brought aboard one by one, a process that takes hours. The brutal cold and the time elapsed explain why so few are found outside the boats. The sea is littered with debris and dotted by a limited number of lifeboats, many carrying fewer people than they could have saved. After the tragedy, inquiries in the United States and the United Kingdom dissect what happened to Titanic in detail. Survivor testimony, radio logs, and technical studies show the decisive chain: side impact, 5 flooded compartments, vulnerable rivets, and high speed. The findings drive major reforms: lifeboats for everyone aboard, permanent ice patrols in danger zones, stricter evacuation drills, continuous radio watch. In shipbuilding, stronger hull designs and higher bulkheads spread fast. In the decades that follow, welding replaces rivets as the standard. Titanic's sinking proved that a long, distributed side scrape could be deadlier than a direct head-on collision. Rivets that failed, 5 compartments breached, and bulkheads that didn't reach the upper deck created a scenario designers never fully imagined. After 1912, ice patrols, lifeboat rules, evacuation training, and structural upgrades made a repeat far less likely. Today, when ships even larger cross the Atlantic with reinforced hulls, advanced detection, and rescue capacity for every soul aboard, modern engineering still echoes the lessons learned on that April night.